In the heart of Ogosu, a prosperous town known for its fertile lands and kind-hearted ruler, lived Abiola, a man whose youth had been filled with promise. Once brilliant and full of dreams, he had grown into a man of countless regrets. He was jobless, his clothes were faded, his pockets empty, and his words were always the same, blaming the world for his misfortunes. If not for his wife, Tiwa, who sold fruits in the market, hunger would have consumed him completely. In other words, he was surviving solely on his hard-working wife's purse. One fateful afternoon, King Adewale, the beloved ruler of Ogosu, was taking a leisurely stroll through the town when he saw a familiar face away from the crowd. At first, he couldn't believe his eyes. Could this be Abiola, his childhood friend? The boy who had once matched him in wit and ambition? But there he was, slouched against a crumbling mud wall, his face wearing the weariness of wasted years. "Abiola," the king called out. Abiola looked up, squinting as if the sun itself had taken human form. When he recognized his old friend, his face lit up. "Your Majesty," he exclaimed, bowing clumsily. King Adewale took him to the palace, and over a lavish meal, Abiola poured out his woes. He blamed the people who had refused him jobs, the elders who never guided him, and even the spirits for causing his fate. "I've always been unlucky," Abiola sighed. "No matter how hard I try, life never favors me." The king listened patiently. Then, after a thoughtful pause, he leaned forward and said, "Abiola, I will give you a chance to change your life. Buried in my palace garden lies a great treasure of gold, jewels, and riches beyond measure. You have until dawn to take as much as you can carry. After that, whatever amount of treasure you will be able to dig up is yours to claim. You shall then have a brand new start to life." Abiola's eyes widened. "Do you really mean it, my king?" "Every word," King Adewale assured him. With a heart pounding like a drum, Abiola ran home to tell Tiwa. "Our suffering has ended. The king said I can come and mine the treasure at the palace," he shouted, as he burst through the door. His wife clapped her hands in joy. "Then go. Go now before the night falls." But Abiola frowned. "Oh, but it's just now that I came from the palace. Don't you know that if I were to return now, the king would think I'm greedy? I am starving. Let me eat first, so I have some strength. And when I am done, I'll go." Tiwa, eager for their fortune, rushed to prepare his favorite meal, indomie pepper chicken. He ate quickly, but after the spicy meal, he found himself wrapped in his own comfort. His eyelids grew heavy, then placed his head on the dining table to rest for a while. In his mind, he still had about 13 more hours to get to the palace. "I will take a short nap," he mumbled. "Just a little rest before I go." Tiwa shook her head. "Abiola, get up. Time is not your friend." But his snores answered her instead. Hours slipped by like water through fingers. When he finally awoke, 2 hours had passed, and the sun was at its peak. Panic seized him, and he jumped up, grabbing his tools. As he dashed toward the palace, the heat of the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly upon him. Sweat trickled down his face, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Ahead, a great baobab tree cast a wide, cool shade. He lay there to rest for a while, because he believed he still had time. He wasn't wrong, But was that the wisest thing to do though? Not really. By the time his eyes opened again, 2 hours had swiftly gone by. A group of young men had gathered right across the field at the other side of the road, their eyes fixed on a makeshift field where 2 teams battled for victory. The match was intense, the air thick with excitement. Abiola froze. His 2 favorite teams in Ogosu were playing against each other. Just a few minutes, he whispered to himself. Let me watch, then I'll go for my treasure. He sank onto the cool earth, fully engaged. Minutes turned into an hour. Then 2. The crowd erupted in cheers and groans as the game reached its climax. It was only when the final whistle blew that Abiola snapped back to reality. The treasure. He jumped up in horror and took off toward the palace like a hunted gazelle. But fate had its own tricks, one that Abiola couldn't have ever seen coming. By this time, the sky had begun its descent into darkness. Abiola ran. He ran as if his very soul depended on it. But just as the palace gates came into view, a heavy drum sounded from within. The gates groaned as they slowly shut. Abiola screamed. Wait! Just 1 more minute. The guards did not listen. The gates were shut. The deal was done. Abiola fell to his knees. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He started blaming his friend, the king, that he had deceived him, because by his calculation, he had at least another 4 hours. But that was where he was completely mistaken. He had failed to consider the fact that the palace gates weren't going to stay open until dawn. He had until dawn to mine the treasure, yes, but he also had to get inside the palace before the gates closed at 6 p.m. He sat at the entrance of the palace, moping. He had been given the chance of a lifetime, yet he had squandered it away. It was not fate that had failed him, nor the people who had denied him work. It was not some unseen curse nor the cruelty of the world. It was him. It was the countless times he had told himself, I will do it later. The small, seemingly harmless decisions, the extra sleep when he should have been up working, the idle chatter when he should have been focused, the excuses he made for every delay, the distractions that lured him in like a moth to a flame. He had spent his days waiting for the perfect moment, forgetting that time does not wait for the unprepared. As he sat there, staring at the great palace gates that would never open for him again, regret gnawed at his soul. And in that bitter moment, he finally understood what he had failed to grasp all his life. The elders of Ogosu were right when they said, the sun does not wait for the lazy, it rises and sets regardless of who is ready.